So let's talk about some of the challenges, and we'll start to talk about some of the constructive ways that Iowans are addressing these challenges. So what are the big challenges? Number one is language. Language. We have 180 to 200 languages in the state. We are not finding interpreters for many of these folks. Even the telephonic interpretation services, which you all may be using, I don't sell these, okay? Just to be clear. A lot of them only have 130, 135, 140 languages, so we've got a gap there. We do have languages in the state that are very rare. They're only spoken by relative handful of thousands of people in the entire country. We have a problem where you might actually be able to find a telephonic interpretation service that provides that language, but it may take an hour to actually find an interpreter. Because remember, those interpretation services have qualified interpreters, but they have to find them. And actually, I do a lot of them. I'm licensed first responder, and I do search and rescue stuff. We did a joint exercise with Marshall County Sheriff's Department last fall, and we actually made the officers interview the parents of the victims in their native language, and it took one of them on the phone with a professional paid telephonic interpretation service 3 tries to actually get the language on 3 continents, by the way, because the person, the operator, thought first it was actually Karenni, but they thought it was like 2 or 3 other languages. So these are not panaceas. It is an issue. We are losing patients in hospitals. We are, because we don't directly communicate with them. I carry in my own personal vehicle, because I am a first responder, an emergency communication kit that only has access to a telephonic interpretation service, 2 plastic telephone handsets with a special splitter that goes on top of my cell phone. I get an interpreter on there, and I have that per person. I also carry with that communication kit fold-out plastic coated symbol cards for emergency communication. You know, hopefully I'll never use it. You know, but it's an issue. We have a lot of folks where I train all the state troopers in the state. So does Dr. Devlin. And once in a while, they all have my cell phone number, they all have Michelle's cell phone number, and once in a while, it doesn't happen too often, I will get a call. Hi, Dr. Gray, this is Trooper so-and-so. Can you listen to this? Say something. You know what rhymes it is? Say it again. You know, and they're oh, I think that's Arabic. Okay, thanks, Dr. Gray. You know, sometimes, you know, I interpreted for once badly in German. You know, these things are happening. I'm getting these calls. What do? You can't directly communicate. You know, we're having a hard time finding qualified in-person interpreters. We have serious problems with interpretation in this state. Very serious. If you have a good, qualified, ethical staff interpreter, please take my advice. Flowers on the desk every day, chocolate every Friday. Keep them happy, because they're few and far between. We have a lot of problems with interpreters practicing law, turning people into the police who shouldn't be because of some old ethnic rivalry. We have interpreters practicing medicine who are not actually ethically and efficiently interpreting that medical encounter. To other challenges, any of these topics, of course, we could go off for hours. And we do training, by the way, on all these. Another one is literacy. And this is for English speakers, too. Literacy rates in this country and in the state have dropped precipitously, and then you add on to that the folks for whom English is a second, third, or fourth language. Literacy is a very, very serious problem. I will share with you, even though this is being recorded, I will share with you that I stopped assigning textbooks, novels in my Africa class at UNI because they don't read. They just didn't read them. They don't read. They get out their they'll get out their smartphones and they'll do a lot of things for me, but they won't read an 180-page novel. They won't do it. They just don't do it. I used to have 5 books in that class before the internet. 5 books. Now there's 0. They don't read. Literacy is a problem. Again, those are English speakers for whom English is a first language. Literacy is a very serious problem. Again, you've got on top of that, you've got a Sudanese mom who's never stepped foot in school, and the dad's gone to school for 3 years, and neither of them speak English, and you can send all the homework you want home, it ain't going to get done. And God bless them, and I know they're going to try, and they're going to marshal their own resources, and I respect that, but that's a heck of a leap. Less than 1 generation. Numeracy is another problem. Simple math, how to use numbers. You can't make any assumptions anymore. We've done entire training on this kind of stuff too. How does innumeracy work? You know, if you tell people, if you try to give people any kind of simple math stuff, like those of you in the healthcare field, try to get them to take their prescriptions properly. And good luck. I mean, this is, everybody's struggling with this. And symbolic literacy, you know, I use symbols from time to time in emergency situations. Symbols are not universal, okay? A lot of them are, a lot of them are not. They're like hand gestures and a lot of other things, which mean blending in one culture and different thing in another. You know, this is a classic example. I show this quite often. This is a good faith effort on a flashcard. This is New Air and English. So whoever put this together, best of intentions. So these are flashcards to explain medical procedures and issues. So if you look in the upper right-hand corner, English, and then that's one of the dialects of New Air, neurology test. But if they have no anatomical understanding or any background or literacy in anatomy, that looks like cauliflower. How do you see where I'm going? I mean, I have English speakers who go, that's what? Oh, that's supposed to be a brain. Oh, see where I'm going? And disasters happen too. I mean, actually, again, all due respect, we all make mistakes. And this is a very well-intentioned, you know, and I've had people say, why does that woman have a turtle inside her? Yeah, that one. But the serious one is on the upper left. Is that, this says operation. But you got to remember, most of these folks are refugees from war. And a lot of them looked at that and it looks like a Janjaweed warrior, how they dressed, coming at them with a knife, and literally those people jumped. This is what you're going to do to me? They jumped up and they ran out the examiner. So again, symbols are not universal. Okay? They help in some cases. They really do. But they're not universal. So the challenge then, as we kind of work through these challenges, what we can do about them, what are some of the strategies, key issues, and so forth. And I think it boils down to this, basically, is that providing culturally responsive services, okay, or being culturally competent. We've actually kind of steered away from that and really gone towards a more active approach that we're providing culturally competent services, okay? And culturally competent services is not about giving up who we are, whoever we are, apologizing for that, but starting to develop an understanding of what our own cultural backgrounds are. And please remember that from your own cultural background, you're going to develop as an individual and as a member of a group, as an ethnicity, a community, a neighborhood, a parish, you're going to have your own cultural background, your own cultural experiences, and from that cultural experience, you're going to develop a certain set of expectations for encounters with people who are different from yourselves. And so if you leave here with nothing else, this is it. What is my cultural background? You know, what am I made up of as a cultural being? And from that experience, what are my expectations for an encounter in an exam room, in a cubicle in DHS, in a home visit? Okay? Because we all bring with us those expectations. And the trick is to understand how their cultural backgrounds and experiences might be very different from our own, and those will generate a different set of expectations. I can guarantee you, 90% of the time, when things go wrong, it's because they are not living up to, or they're not equaling our expectations for what that encounter is supposed to look like. Does that mean you have to stop being who you are? Absolutely not. You have to apologize for that? Absolutely not. But understanding how those expectations are different. And it makes a world of a difference. So, as we talk about human culture then, okay, what is human culture, right? Human culture is the sum of everything that you believe in, the rules for your behavior, in terms of your interactions with people, how do you raise your children. I'll give you some specific examples about this here in just a minute. But if you don't think about your culture, that means it works. Okay? So chances are most of us in our day-to-day lives, we're busy with our families and get our kids off to school, right? And we're working with our colleagues, and we're tired at home, we go home and make dinner, we hang out with the kids and make sure they all get bathed and get them back up in the morning, we get to school. We don't stop and think about our culture. We don't stop and have existential crises and ask ourselves, why did I just do that the way I did it? And you know why? because that's your culture and it works. If you don't stop and think about it, that means it works. That's your culture. I got to tell you that one of the greatest challenges as an anthropologist when I do this with any audience, I don't care who it is just getting people to stop and think, oh, that's why I did that the way that I did, instead of just assuming that everybody does it that way, because they don't. The best analogy is that human beings don't realize they live in culture like a fish doesn't realize it lives in water. And so one of the challenges then, again, without apologizing, none of us have to apologize, that I have my own cultural experience. What is that, and how is that different from our new clients, and how are their expectations potentially different from mine? That's the key. And again, I don't care what agency it is. It's ILEA, I don't social workers, I don't care if it's physicians or nurses, I don't care. Okay? Everybody brings expectations to their encounters. And understanding how our expectations are different from other people is very, very different. And I'm going to share with you a couple of cheesy graphs. Kind of illustrate this. Some of you may have seen versions of these. This is kind of the elementary school version. I'll give you the more sophisticated one here in just a minute. But what we tend to do as human beings is we think about other people's cultures. We tend to think about the stuff that's really obvious. Okay? So what makes them different from us? Well, maybe the way they dress, the language that they use, the way they use mass media, right? And that's the easy stuff. You know, that's the tip of that iceberg. That's, what is it, the 10 or 15% of the iceberg you actually see above the surface? It's that other 90% under the water that wrecks our ships, right? Well, what's there? What's the easy stuff? What's the stuff that we see? And again, this is all wonderful. We all have gone to potlucks, and I love that stuff. International potlucks, but that's not culture. That's about 45 minutes of trying somebody else's food. Okay, and I love that stuff. Don't get me wrong. I love those things, you know. I have lots of friends from other countries. I love eating their food, but that's not culture. Maria's going to wear her traditional Guatemalan gown to Mass on Sunday. Okay, I'm sure it's beautiful. And a lot of people will take their picture with her. That's not culture. That's the easy stuff. That's the stuff above the surface. Right? That's the easy stuff. The real difficult stuff. The harder stuff for us to see and to deal with is the stuff underneath the surface. We're going to talk a lot about this stuff. Social norms. What can you reasonably expect from other people in your culture versus other cultures? In other words, what are the rules between men and women, among men? What are the rules that you don't have to discuss? That's culture. Okay? And for the most part, most of us, throughout most of our lives, and our day-to-day lives, our families, our friends, our colleagues, and our neighborhoods, the rules go unspoken because they're already shared. What are rituals? Human rituals. Human rituals are those things that we do in life that comfort us. And they comfort us because we know what's going to happen. So when I was very active back in the day in my faith community, I loved that hour and 15 minutes in the morning. And why did I like it so much? Because I knew what was going to happen. Almost by the minute. So this is great because it comforted me, because other than the sermon and the homily, I knew what was going to happen. And I love that feeling. That's a ritual. All human beings engage in rituals. You may have different rituals, different faith communities. Sure. So those are comforting to us. Okay? There are other kinds of rituals, rites of passage. And generally speaking, everybody says, we're going to do it differently. You probably aren't. You're going to keep 90%. Have I had young women say, my wedding will be different? Well, not really. Then, trust me, 90% will be the same. My wedding will be special. Okay, you go there. There's a formula that's called ritual. What's a taboo? All cultures have taboos. Taboos are things that are unspeakable. Now, they're in our heads, and if I really pushed some of you to to name one, you probably could, but it's pretty uncomfortable. It's the unspeakable. That's a taboo. All cultures have taboos. Are there some universal taboos? More or less. There's always variation on these things, but that's a taboo. This is simply something that is so profane that it's unspeakable. Does it still happen? Unfortunately, yes. Okay, and some people, some of our colleagues have to deal with that stuff. And they develop their own strategies to kind of work through that. We'll talk a lot about communication styles here in a few minutes. How is it that you demonstrate that you're actually listening? How do you do that? That varies by culture. We'll talk a lot about silence here in a few minutes. The importance of eye contact or the lack of eye contact. How do you deal with body spacing, your bubble? How big is your bubble? That's all cultural, right? And we'll talk more about that in just a minute. Now that's the last one. That's the junior high school version. Here's the university version. Okay? And again, these are just models. They're tools. Okay, and some people find these effective. I use them just for illustrative purposes. What you see above the line there, of course, food, flags, symbols, even language. Okay, it's all important stuff. Arts and crafts, even their literature. I mean, a lot of you have read books that were written, at least initially, by folks from other cultures. May have been translated. I mean, I read that stuff all the time, right? But that's just the easy stuff up here. That's above the surface. Where do we get in trouble? Where's the hard stuff come in? It's the stuff, again, underneath the surface. We'll talk a lot about concepts of time here. Okay? It's always a touchy topic with Iowans in particular. Ask yourself questions like, who is it okay for my son or daughter to marry? I've got, we used to have one of the largest Saudi contingent of students in the country at UNI, and those Saudi boys would come, and they never met a girl in their life. They didn't. They have, other than their sisters, they've never met a girl. Get there, they get to UNI, they get there in August. Of course, they're going, oh my God, what are we doing? They will date Iowa girls, they will date them, but not one of them is eligible to marry because of their cultural expectations. Who's it okay for your son or daughter to marry? Who is it? How do you express pride? How do you know? How do you express it? What makes us feel proud of something and not so proud of something else? How do you express that? What makes something shameful to you? That's the deep stuff. Okay? And as we go through this, these kind of strategies and how things can go wrong, but also a lot of things can go right, give yourselves a break. You're going to screw up. But so are they. They're going to screw up too. Okay? Again, where do those expectations come from? I do this for a living. Okay? I'm in and out of 5 or 6 cultures a week. I speak 3 or 4 languages with these people. And I screw up. I apologize and ask, oh man, what did I just do? How did you have handled that back home? I do this for a living. I eat and breathe this stuff. Okay? But I screw up too. You will too, but so will our clients. Because remember, we're looking at their iceberg. They don't know ours. So where are some of the critical areas? Okay? I can guarantee you that 80% of the problems that we have working with folks from other cultures can be explained in this one PowerPoint slide. I can almost guarantee it. If you kind of walked away from an encounter and go, that didn't go very well, and then we go back to those expectations, right? Because the culture that I come from is what we call low context culture. That is, the emphasis is on the individual and the nuclear family. And by the way, personal stuff I've gone through in the last couple of years, I'm not even sure what the heck that is anymore. I'm a single father of a 14-year-old girl. So that's my family. And I have an older daughter too, but that's my family right now. That's my nuclear family. And I am very proud of being a low context father because since the day my daughters were born, I have been teaching them to not need me, to make myself superfluous. I want them to always love me, come back and see me, take care of me when I'm old, right? But my goal is to make them not need me. When are you going to buy? You're going to buy your own tires next time? I had a conversation with my older daughter like 3 months ago. Maybe you can pay for your tires next time. Okay, I'll carry your insurance 6 more months. Maybe you can get a job. That's a low context conversation. Have you even thought about applying for a job? I'm sure you're very comfortable in the basement, Derek. That's a low context approach. The emphasis on the individual. Okay? My achievements, my responsibility. Okay? And what most of us do in our culture is we were trained this way too. You have only one person in the world to blame, are pat on the back, to blame for your failures, are pat on your back for your successes, and that's you. Don't ever tell me the devil made you do anything, kid. Get off your butt and go get a job. Low context culture. That's my culture. I've proudly raised 2 daughters in this tradition, and they're doing pretty well. Okay? I'll take credit for that. Right? That's fine. But here's the challenge. Again, remember what your background is, your expectations. Right? The vast majority of our new clients come from what we call high context cultures, where the emphasis is not on the individual, but to the group, the big extended family, the clan, the faith community, the village. First obligation is not to yourself, and they are not raised with this idea that with which I've raised my daughters, that they're independent actors on a big global stage and better get their act together. Most of these folks are raised to think you will never, ever abandon your obligation to your kin, to your village, your ethnic group, your faith community, your clan. Your number one obligation is to them, not to yourself as an individual. So a lot of times what happens, and again, it kind of doesn't really matter what you do, frankly, is that you've gone in, a lot of us, not all of us, have gone into these encounters with the expectations that these folks are going to be motivated by the same things by which I am motivated in terms of my own obligations. And I'm responsible for my behavior. And why aren't you taking this benefit? What is wrong with this guy? He won't take this benefit. Or why does this guy take 2 weeks to figure out what he's going to do with his life? It's a no-brainer. In my culture, it's a no-brainer. I would have taken that immediately, right? Because of the group obligations of high context culture. They're not independent actors. They're part of a larger whole, a community, a big extended family, to whom they have their first and usually only obligation. It's not what you do. In my culture, it's what you do, right? You know, come on, you go to a wedding, you go to a party, meet a bunch of strangers, what's the second question? What do you do? Oh, you're a social worker, that's cool. Okay. Oh, you're a physician, oh, that's great, okay. Why do people ask us what we do? Second or third question, you meet a stranger at a wedding, you know, you're at a party or something. Why is it that always the second or third question why they ask us? Why do they do that? Does it matter? Why do we ask that question? Don't overthink it, guys. Today we're all anthropologists. Don't overthink it. Our professions define us. And correct. So if you're a compassionate person, you're more likely to social worker, nurse, sure, absolutely. That's absolutely. So this is a compassionate person who is probably underpaid and probably deserves to get paid more, right? But it also has to do with class status, right? And a lot of it has to do with our own stereotypes about each other. Oh, you are? You've all heard that, right? Oh, I thought you would have been, I pegged you as a, It happens all the time. You and I students, it's quite interesting, their cultures change too. They actually used to go to bars and parties and meet each other. It's all this now. This swiping. And I gave him a laugh, like, oh, she's a right, this kid's just right. So we actually used to go to parties and talk to each other. But when they actually do meet, what is this, man, it's the same. I don't know where they don't get me off. My oldest daughter, and she's doing, like last year, she was in undergraduate school, she's doing this. Megan, what the heck are you doing? Getting a date. What? Yeah. Well, I'll go to coffee with him. What? Yeah, I said, have you met this guy? No. We'll go have coffee. Yeah, I knew 5 minutes later. It's like, go to parties. And what inevitably, even when they do meet face to face, what do they ask? What's the second question? What's your major? Right? Why are they asking what's your major? Because they're trying to figure out, one, your income possibilities, your status within society, and whether or not you want to marry them. Oh, you're a finance major. Can I get you another beer? They meet the anthropologist. Oh, that sounds interesting. Excuse me. We all do this, right? That's what we do. Low context culture. High context culture, it's who you are. Oh, you are so-and-so's granddaughter. Come on. I knew your aunt. It was fat, and I've got to tell you, the Iowa Women's Hall of Fame, the two grandchildren who accepted the award, posthumously for Viola. It was absolutely fascinating. They were, I think, in their 40s or something. That she had, again, I don't remember specific, probably 12 grandkids or something like that. She was, a big family. And almost all of their stories were about the high context nature of her family. There was none of that. Those are two very successful people that have been great in the world. They didn't talk about themselves. They talked about this big family in Cedar Rapids that made them who they were. And they credited Grandma for a lot of that. It's very high context. So what's going to happen in it, again, you're going to think back and go, oh, that's what happens. That's why this person behaved this way. How many times have you offered a benefit to an individual and they've gone home for 2 or 3 days and come back and turned it down? That's because they don't want to benefit from themselves unless their families can. We've had people in the state from high context cultures who have been offered jobs. And 2 or 3 days later, they'll come back and say, thank you, but I can't accept this job. The middle-aged white guy employer goes, what the hell's wrong with this kid? Right? Like, I offer this kid advancement, a bigger salary, right? To be a boss. The kid comes back to me 5 days later, says, no, thank you. I said, what's wrong with this kid? And I explain. What did the kid do in the 3 or 4 days between the offer and the refusal? He checked with his family. You get your mother, you get your aunt on the phone in Mexico City. You call her right now, you ask her, did you talk to your grandfather yet? Get him on the phone. You ask him what he thinks about this. You check in with everybody in the family and find out. It would have put him in an awkward position to be the boss to one of his uncles, which is unacceptable. Kid said no. What motivates people? Okay, has anybody seen the movies My Big Fat Greek Wedding? The entire premise of those movies is high context culture. By the way, the second one, if you haven't seen it, it's wonderful. It's even better than the first. I will not give it away. But it's all about high context culture. The single boy from the Yankee family falls in love with the girl from the high context Greek family. They act like they're from different planets. They were. And how they made it work. It's all about high context cultures. I can guarantee you 80% of the issues that you have could go back right here. I could regale you with those kinds of stories. Where do your obligations come from? All right? Why is it, you still have friends, you probably have friends go, you talk to your daughter every day? Well, I talk to all 3 of my daughters every day. I call them and they call me. Decision making is often motivated by your high context or low context orientation. So again, if we're emphasis on the individual, then it's your choice. I am responsible for what happens. I'll ask for advice. I'll get people to try to walk me through this, but at the end of the day, this is my decision. Group responsibility, it's not the fact that you made a decision, it's how you got there. And as much as possible, you've touched base with everybody in your group of obligation, which again, and I want to talk about this very broadly, it can be a family, an extended family. A lot of African Americans, it's their faith community. That's their context, okay? And you show respect to the elders within that community by asking them for their advice. Ma'am, I was offered this job today. What is your advice? You touch base. You build consensus. It's not the fact that you've made a decision. It's how you got to that decision. Okay? That's very, very, very important. What we tend to do in my culture anyway, and a lot of yours, as you get the way that we think about things, is that we're going to, okay, folks, let's get back on track here. We've got some decisions to make. Okay, but don't you want to hear how we feel about it? What difference does that make? Okay, we're all human beings, we all have feelings, but in our culture we tend to downplay those things. All these other cultures, we're going to take a few minutes and hear what Barbara has to say about this. Barbara, I think you had some concerns about this. So let's just pause for a minute, folks, and hear what Barbara has to say about this. Now, at the end of the day, we may move on, but at least Barbara has had her opportunity to say what she has to say. Barbara, I know you have some hard feelings about this, and I'm sure everyone here appreciated hearing your concerns. Thank you. Then what do most of us do in American culture anyway? We're going to move on. You're all human beings, we're all mammals, we all have feelings, we all have intuition. You have a bad feeling about this? Okay. Well, maybe you could tell me over coffee sometime. That's the way our culture tends to think. This linear thinking, right? You never get to C until you're done with A, you get to B, then you do D. Why do we love agendas? Our culture, we love agendas, so much that they're actually legal. The mayor will tell you that that agenda is a legal document, right? Why do we love agendas? Because we tend to focus on low context and that linear kind of thinking. Heaven forbid we go from A to D. But a lot of these folks, these other cultures, they're going to drive you crazy because, okay, I got 5 things to get done in this order, and they're going to jump all over the place. They're going, could we get back to my agenda here? I've trained DHS workers for years. You can't walk into a household with these folks with a pile of papers and just sit there very coldly, march through all those papers, put them down, have a cup of coffee, and ask about the pictures on the mantle. You're going to get the same information. How many grandchildren do you have, you know? What are their names? No. Is that her up there? Oh, she's so beautiful. What was her name again? There are ways to do this, right? It takes patience, it takes time. Emotion doesn't matter. You want to touch base. You want to include people in the decision. High context. Did you call your uncle yet? Now, we're not going to go anywhere with this until you call your aunt. Did you get on the phone yet? Well, Skype her. I don't care. Find out what she thinks about this. What's her opinion? Touching base. You know, what are your obligations? A lot of cultures, I need to talk to the elders in my faith community. I need to talk to people who lead my clan. I can't give you a decision right now, I'm sorry. Right? I need to go back and get some advice for this. So that'll drive a lot of people crazy. What really drives most Iowans crazy is time. All right? Time. So I actually own a number of watches that keep dying on me, right? But what do we all use these days? Right, and I think if everybody had a phone right now, they're all within probably 2 seconds of each other, okay? And we tend to be what we call monochronic. That means there is one time, and the meaning of that time is shared by everybody. In Iowa, especially in rural Iowa, when does the 10 o'clock meeting start? 9:45. Early is, see, this is a change in the culture, see? Because look, this is urbanization. Watch this again. 10 years ago, there would have been a chorus of people. Here we try again. Early is
on time.
There. On time is
late.
There you go. How many times? How many times have I gotten up in the middle of winter to go somewhere? You know, it's 10 below. I get my daughter off to school. I'm just dragging. I get in the car, drive 3 hours. I get there, and it's cold. You know, and I'm grouchy, and a person will meet me at the door. And I say I start at 10, quarter till 10. Person's meeting me at the door. Well, everybody's here. Should we get started? That's Iowa culture. Well, but I just got here. I want to take off my coat, go to the bathroom, maybe have a cup of coffee. But everyone's here. We're scheduled to start at 10, right? Yeah, but everyone's here. This is called monochronism. Monochronic. Okay. And what happens is that more and more of our clients are what we call polychronic. Time is relative. Time is a suggestion. 2 o'clock on a Tuesday? Okay, thanks. They may be there at 3 o'clock on Thursday. Okay, these are suggestions. It drives Iowans crazy. Wait a minute, your time was at 2 o'clock Tuesday. Now this has serious implications down the road when people miss those 2 appointments and they lose out on the benefit. And I know this takes a lot of patience, right? But most of the people in the world, okay, actually are polychronic. Not everybody, right? I could regale you with these stories, but I had a client, I don't know, it was about a year ago, a woman, I think she's from Webster City, I think, don't quote me on that. Came up to me during a training, she said, I think you just explained my son's wedding. I said, what do you mean? And she said, my son just married a Filipino girl from California, and the wedding was in California, of course. And so all the Iowans drive her flat to California. The wedding's supposed to start at like 10, 20 minutes till 10. Where are all the Iowans? Sitting in the pews. They look over. Nobody else is sitting in the church. The music starts, and they're, did she get cold feet? She's not going to marry her son. What's going on here? They keep looking back. 10 minutes till 10, they are just dead panicked. Oh my gosh, what's happening? And so they're all sitting there waiting because they were in this, they were there, they're monochronic. Go to Iowans, early's on time, we're waiting. About 5 after 10, a couple of people come in and sit down. The wedding actually took place about 11:10. Everybody was there and had a great time. The Iowans are just, heading toward the bar. I mean, we can't do this. Why aren't these people here? Right? And that's monochronic versus polychronic. Now, this is an important point, because say, okay, Mark, that's fair enough. Those people come from polychronic cultures, they come to Iowa. Don't they have to get jobs and become monochronic to keep their jobs? Mostly, but I'll tell you what happens. They get to work, they clock in, they leave, they go home, and they go back to being polychronic. They don't stop being who they are when they cross the border. Now, we can work with that stuff. We can talk about the importance of this stuff. I've had so many people over the years, they'll jump up and they'll light up, and I'll talk about high context, low context, decision making, time responsibility, stuff like that. I actually had a woman, I don't know, it's about 6 months ago, kind of go this, and she goes, I said, yes, ma'am. She said, you just explained my marriage to me. I said, I have? How long have you been married? 12 years. I said, okay, who'd you marry? Guy from Peru. I said, you just explained my marriage to me. I didn't just marry a guy, I married his whole bloody family, I said, yeah, high context culture. I said, thank you. I feel so much better. It's like, free counseling. Okay, they learned. But she was serious. She said, I couldn't figure it out for 12 years. I love the guy to pieces. We have 2 kids together. And I think she's very sincere. I think they probably had a pretty solid marriage. But the things that drove her crazy, she needed me to explain to her in a training 12 years later. It happens all the time. I have aha moments all the time. I have people, oh, that's what happened. Okay, I said, yes, sir. And you go, you just explained what happened in the office the other day. We're good, thank you. Happens all the time. Internal locus of control, this is important. Because we have a lot of conflict now. Are you responsible for your own actions, or is somebody responsible for your failures or successes? Yes. And this, yeah, what?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yeah, right. So remember, these are spectrums, right? So the way it usually works, you cannot absolutely be responsible for absolutely everything that happens in your life. I'm going to drive home here in an hour or so, and I'm a very good driver, I'm defensive, but I can't control what other people do. Okay? Nor can I, at the other end of that, rely entirely on faith, or even fate, or destiny. Although a lot of our cultures, again, these are spectrums, remember? You can be a dyed-in-the-wool atheist and say, anything that happens in my life, I'm responsible for it. Well, okay. On the other hand, inshallah, everything is written. It's all fate. It's all destiny. If something happens to me or doesn't happen to me, God wills it. Most of us live our life somewhere in between, right? Where I'm responsible for most of the things I do, but I'll also turn to God to explain the things I can't figure out, to explain the unexplainable. I'll ask God to intervene on my behalf. I'll thank God if I've narrowly missed an accident, being killed, or having one of my children sick. Different people from different cultures are going to deal with this, and they're going to express it and articulate it in very different ways. Okay? So that locus of control thing is really important. Because you're going to have, I used to work a lot in the Middle East, and you jump in a cab in Cairo, and you say, please take me to this place, and what do they always say? Inshallah, if God wills it. God willed everything. We're going to meet tomorrow for lunch, inshallah. So I had Saudi students, hey, I'll see you tomorrow for the test, inshallah. God wills it, I'll be here. Most Americans don't think that, well, of course I'll be here. I'm a responsible person. See the difference? But again, most people are somewhere along the spectrum. Most of us, in my culture anyway, will take primary responsibility for our behaviors. And what do my children do? Yeah, I've raised those children. If they really screw up, I'm going to be there. But I know that it's some things over which I actually have no control. Okay? Most human beings feel this way. There are things that are not explainable. There are things that happen even in your work that you just go, how can people do this? How can people live their lives this way? How can we explain these behaviors? Where does that pain come from? Another way to operationalize it Okay? Think about it this way. Think about the difference between grieving and mourning. Okay? Grief is that feeling here, you've lost someone. We all have this from time to time. Like you lose a parent, you lose something, like my children get very ill. Feel it, right? It's that pain. It's that awful, god-awful pain. It makes you want to cry all the time. All human beings feel that loss right here. You may have different body parts, but all human beings feel grief. That's the feeling. But mourning is how your culture wants you to express that. See the difference? So grief is universal. Don't let anybody tell you that people from other cultures don't feel it right here when they lose a kid. They do. But mourning is how your culture wants you to express that. See the difference? So operationalize those things. There are some universals. A lot of that, we're all mammals, for heaven's sake. You're going to feel that the same way. But different cultures are going to give you different ways on how to express that. I had a close friend, African-American, I think she was in Iowa City, and I was in some meeting with her, said, Mark, I got to ask you a question. I said, yeah. She said, I went to my first white funeral. I said, oh, how was that for you? She said, I got there, and I couldn't figure out why I had those Kleenex boxes out there. I said, it's because they're going to cry. Why? You know, celebrate this person's life. You know, you're going to mourn, you're going to feel grief. That's fine. But how you express it can be completely different across cultures. Time responsibilities, goal orientation, again, generalizing across the world, cultures that tend to be very monochronic, very precise, right? Somewhat monochronic, and of course polychronic, which is most of our new clients. Okay, time is relative. These are concepts. Okay, and we do have problems with this. We've actually recommended to a number of clinics to stop doing 10-minute, stop bothering with a 10-minute scheduled appointment and just say, come Friday afternoon. Because you know what they did back home? They went on Friday afternoon, they waited. You triage them, and you get to the most urgent cases first, and people wait 2 or 3 hours. That's what they did back home. Administrators don't like to hear this stuff because, you know, we got this productivity, and I respect that, but it doesn't always work. So try to keep that in mind as well. Assumptions about communication. When you think about how you communicate with other people, again, most of us, most of the time, are not going to stop and think about, okay, the person with whom I'm having this discussion, can I assume context? In other words, can I assume that this person will have enough context, cultural context, life experience, in order for me to have this conversation this way or a different way? So again, most of us in our day-to-day lives, right? I can walk up to anybody in this room and just start up a conversation about the weather, right? And I will assume that everyone in this room will have enough context. I'll just assume that, right? That I can start to talk about the weather, and you'll know what I'm talking about. And as that conversation goes back and forth, we have enough context and shared language, right? That we can have an intelligent and direct conversation about that. Fair enough? Okay. Context is assumed. Because we have a shared context, I don't have to explain things to you. Now, you know what a thunderstorm is, right? Because we both share that frame of reference. See where I'm going with this? In my culture, so listen, I know you're from Iowa, but let me explain to you what a thunderstorm is. Wouldn't that be insulting? Yeah, I grew up here. I know what it is. I know what an EF5 tornado is. Okay, back off. It's insulting. If I go up to that, okay, boy, doesn't sound to me like you have any experience with this. I grew up here. That's insulting. Okay? And if I don't have to be real clear about things because that was signaled to you that I don't think you get it. I said thunderstorm. Thunderstorm? Yeah. See where I'm going with this? So if I can assume that context then, and I can have this conversation, and you know what? It gets pretty heavy. Go back to your iceberg, right? Talk about the clothing, the food, you know. You get to the heavy stuff. How do you raise your children? So I can have conversation with most of my colleagues, even at the university, not all of them, and we can have a contextualized conversation about how to raise children. And for the most part, we're going to share that same context. We're not going to have to articulate things for each other. We'd actually be insulted by each other if we had to explain things. Who's it okay to marry? What's your preferred communication style? The meaning is taken from the context itself. When you work with people from other cultures, maybe who speak different languages, all those assumptions fly out the window. Go back to your iceberg. Oh, that's a beautiful dress. Thank you. This is my grandmother's. That's cool. That's the tip of the iceberg. This food is really interesting. That's Iowa speak for yuck. People talk about their, right and wrong, right? Is it wrong to lie? I'm watching every face in the room. Is it wrong to lie? Most people go, yes, of course. If you're a Christian, is it a sin to lie? Absolutely. Okay? Someone hands you food you've never had before, you eat it. When they say, how'd you like it? And you say, thank you. Is that lying? Or if the really aggressive Iowans say, well, that was different. Is that lying? It's not? But is it true? Did you like it? Thank you. It was different. When you communicate with people from other cultures who don't have your same expectations, don't have your same background, this is the trap on the left. Context not assumed. You presume the explanations are clear. I don't have to explain this to you. I don't have to explain to you how the Medicare system works in this country, do I? I have a PhD and nobody's made it clear to me yet. Unambiguous explanations, the meanings must be expressed precisely. So what's really hard then? That again, 90% of the time, 90% of the, if I'm going to have a conversation with any of you, I can have a conversation based on the right side of this slide. But when you deal with people from other cultures, it is really hard. Again, what is my expectation? Okay, what is my expectation for how I'm going to communicate with this person? That's the hard part. And remember, we don't always stop to think about this stuff. Remember? Again, you don't have to apologize for your expectations, but know where the heck they came from. And they won't have to either. But you cannot assume that context is there. And you will have, and even though you may find it insulting that I have to explain what a thunderstorm is to you, because you probably grew up here, you know how many immigrants and refugees don't really know what a tornado is? They don't. Tornadoes are relatively unique to the central part of the United States. They happen sometimes other places, but they're quite rare.